hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. We are back and better than ever. My name is Bradley Ball, and it is so good to have you with us. Last week, I presented how to use resource locks to save your Azure SQL database and instances from accidental deletion. Then on Tuesday, we had our Azure Data Community Roundtable. On Wednesday, Niraj Jafari was back, and he presented write and shortcut Azure Databricks Delta directly to Microsoft Fabric tables. And then on Monday, Daniel Taylor, Daniel Taylor was back again with MI Link, the ultimate disaster recovery solution for SQL Server 2022. So much to do, so much to see. You don't want to miss a thing. If this is your first time heading your way over to Tales from the Field, give us a like and give us a subscribe. We drop content every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. On Monday and Wednesday, we drop our MS Tech Bits, and today is Tuesday, which means it is the Azure Data Community Roundtable. It is time for us to share content from the creators in the community with the community. And we have a jam-packed show for you. If you want to interact with the show, it's so easy to do so. All you have to do is on the live stream over on YouTube, make a comment on the show, and one of my amazing co-hosts will see that. They will add your comment to the show. You will become a part of the show. Speaking of those amazing co-hosts, I am joined by Mr. Andreas Padilla, the mountain man himself, Mr. Daniel Taylor, the man in a hat, Mr. Josh Luedeman. And Uber thought it was a disruptor, but man, this guy originated the term. It is your friend and mine, Mr. Niraj Jafari. A quick programming note. There's a couple things that we've want you to do as a call to action. The first is we are here for the Azure Data Community Roundtable. So you want to join the Azure Data Community, and we want you to join it too. Head over to the Microsoft Azure Data Community website. Find a user group near you so you can participate in real in-person interactions. And it's a wonderful way to be able to find that community and participate. Not to mention, if you're a speaker and you're looking for opportunities, it's a wonderful way to find the different organizations within the community and how you interact with them. Once you do that, where do we want you to go? Well, we want you to head over to SQL Saturday. Over on SQL Saturday, we have wonderful live in-person events where you get first-class training from Microsoft employees, MVPs, some of the top consultants and workers out in the field sharing what they do. It's like coming home and breathing a sigh of relief, and you don't want to miss that. There's a couple dates we're looking at on here. First off, SQL Saturday in Atlanta on April the 20th, and SQL Saturday Jacksonville on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Going to be a really fun time for all of us. Well, so what do you do after that? Next place you need to go, of course, is Data Saturday. On Data Saturday, you will find wonderful and amazing virtual events all over the globe that you could participate in as a speaker, or you could attend as an attendee. And you're going to see many of the same people you would see at a SQL Saturday participating at a Data Saturday. But wait, there's more. If you are using Fabric, if you are a fabricator, we love you, and we want you to come and participate in our LinkedIn channel. The product group is there. We are there, and there is constant people updating information, asking questions, sharing blogs, sharing videos. Some of the content that you're going to see on the roundtable came directly from the creators in the community who post on this channel, and we thank you for doing so. So make sure you hop over there and join us to be able to learn some wonderful stuff with Fabric. Speaking of wonderful stuff, I had a great weekend. It was a birthday weekend, and I got together with my good buddy Jorge Segura, with Dan, and with Josh. The only thing missing was Andreas and Niraj. We missed you guys. We shared some pictures of the oysters that we ate. Andreas, how was your weekend, buddy?
I got that problem I had off my shoulders. I got my lease. I got a new lease. So excellent. I'm riding now in a bigger car, but my pockets are being, there's a hole in my pocket. That's the problem. Bigger car, hole in the pocket.
I feel like that happened when I had kids. There was already a small hole in my pocket, but it came in like a great big sieve. Ironically, when they went to college, somehow it got bigger. I didn't think it could. It did.
Oh, okay, good.
Well, I was going to say, what'd you get, Andres? Because yeah, we went through that in my house just last month, getting a new vehicle. What'd you go?
We got a family ride. We got the Subaru Ascent.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
I like Subaru.
Yeah, it does leave quite a hole in the pocket. It makes you feel like maybe one developed and everything just keeps falling out of the pocket. I don't know.
Yeah. Where's public transportation when I need it? That's what I need now.
Yeah, I hear you. Florida's not set up for that really well. Got to be in a big city for something like that. All right. Well, speaking of things that are set up well, I couldn't set this man up any better if I tried. It is the roundtable. People are here for the content. We're going to get over to some of that great content, and I'm going to start with a man who is a myth and a legend. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. The one and only Mr. Niraj Jafari. Niraj, you've got dynamic subscriptions for Power BI reports in preview. What do we got going on here?
So similarly that we had like dynamic subscription for paginated reports, now we have similar things in Power BI. So now what you can do is you can have dynamic subscription and you can subscribe to what report that you want to have, weekly updates or whatever you want to have the updates to it. Michael goes around and shows how to do that. He goes step by step. So rightly, yep, you just go in there and then subscribe to doing it up. You can set up dynamic subscription for it. So any users who want to have access to it can subscribe to the output of it every time it releases a new data set, and then it goes up showing you how to do the whole stuff in there. Right now, this is in preview, but definitely it will go to GA at some point of time. But something that people were asking for it, and good to have it in Power BI.
Absolutely. That's a nice feature. It reminds me, Dan, of back in the day when we were DBAs and we would get those daily reports on the status of our servers. And you were going through and you were checking for what's the servers I have and what's the content we have. So interesting is that if you could filter everything out, there was a lot of white noise that we had to go through. So being able to get that specific data that applies to you is some incredibly interesting stuff. It helps shortcut that process. I saw you come off mute. I didn't know if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I very much so. I hate all that noise surrounding things. I want actionable items. I don't want to know that your job ran successfully. I want to know your job failed so that we can call the appropriate people to get them on the task.
Absolutely. And speaking of, there's a task that I've been working on. This was something that actually helped me along in that transforming JSON to Lakehouse tables with Microsoft Fabric notebooks, a step-by-step guide. Rie Merritt does a really, really great job of walking through this. And what I love is the detail of it. You can see there's a get JSON API. He's taking that data from the API, he's transferring it to a notebook. And then what's in the notebook? Well, he starts processing the data, right? He looks at the JSON file, breaks down the format of it, what we need to do to be able to read it, but how do we then take that and call the specific functions we need to be able to say, here's a schema, here's the data types we have. Let's break this down and get this into a really nice column or set of data. So that way we can use this and then we can write it. Now, the interesting thing is he's using the right format mode here. We've got another video that we did recently where we utilize the append. The append not only creates table, but it allows you to do that afterwards. So if you combine that command with what he's doing here, you could reload data over and over again to your table and be able to parse your JSON. I thought this was just absolutely fantastic stuff. There's a lot of apps out there that use JSON and nested JSON. And it's something that we've got to figure out. How do we get this data? And sometimes it's message queues. How do we parse it? How do we get it into our data warehouse so we can have actionable insights on this? So this really spoke to me. It was great stuff. Speaking of great stuff, of course, I'm going to follow up with some great stuff. And this person is just great as well. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. It's the Mountain Man, Mr. Daniel Taylor. Server Dashboards in Azure Data Studio by Mr. Steve Jones, MVP extraordinaire. What do we got here, Dan?
Yeah, so I felt really weird doing the last video because, as a lot of you know, I've become very fond of Azure Data Studio, and I use it pretty much all the time now. And I had to step into SSMS the other day, and it was like a whole different world for me. So here, what I wanted to share is if folks aren't using Azure Data Studio, we've got a couple videos here on the channel. Steve Jones, though, walks through the Azure Data Studio, goes through the server dashboard, explains some things about the dashboard, default information, a little bit about the SQL agent. Now, some folks may need to install the SQL agent extension within their Azure Data Studio, so you may want to look out for that if you don't have that there. The performance dashboards as well. He talks about those, but the coolest thing about this article, and I may have to borrow some of this for a ADS, an Azure Data Studio demo, is Steve gets into customizing the server dashboard, which is really the power behind Azure Data Studio, is you can write extensions for it and you can write customizations to make it look and feel like you want it to, making your job a lot easier, getting rid of a lot of that white noise that you might not necessarily want to see inside the dashboard. So it's a great long article.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a great long post, but it's got a lot of detail on it. I love it because he covers that step-by-step functionality of how to be able to do that. And that's just so critical in empowering people to be able to use your blog or your article and be able to apply it to their everyday life. I would expect nothing less than from the editor of SQL Server Central. He's a fantastic guy, and that's a wonderful resource by Steve. Speaking of wonderful resources, I saw this. I was incredibly intrigued because, of course, who's it coming from? Mr. Wonderful himself. And you know who I'm talking about. It is Mr. Andreas Padilla with Azure AI Studio, a nearly complete toolbox for AI development. Andreas, walk me through it.
Martin Hello puts out a great little, golden nugget here. I love the way he presents Azure AI Studio for the mass, for us people out there. Usually, I get stir crazy when I walk into a cockpit, a new portal, a new environment, and I see all these buttons and you don't know what's going on. Martin Heller, what he does is he breaks it down for us. What's in Azure AI Studio. You have a model catalog. You have the ability to do model benchmarkings. He gives you the concept of what Azure AI Studio is trying to do is lean more towards the model as a service versus model as a platform. He talks to us a little bit about model filtering, and he does a good job about comparing it to other AI Studio products that Google has, that AWS has. But all in all, I love what he gives me here. He explains it well. What I have, once I step into that cockpit, I know where to go, what buttons to push. I love that he explains a little bit about Vision AI and language capabilities and responsible AI. Couldn't ask for anything more for how to explain Azure AI Studio.
Great stuff. And speaking of, when I saw this next one, I went, wow, this is amazing. As a matter of fact, I thought it was so amazing that I was going to end up grabbing it, but I couldn't because another amazing man had already grabbed this article and made it theirs. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. It's the Mr. Amazing, Mr. Hat. I got to say, though, Josh, real quick before I go to this, I've been kind of disappointed. I noticed that you're not taking any of the compliments I'm giving to anybody else, assuming there's yours. That's one of my favorite parts of the broadcast is going, was this a good enough compliment? Did Josh want it to be his? Clearly, I need to up my game.
The last one, I thought I was up, and you really shined it on really well for Andres. And I was sitting here trying to think if I had a book close to me about how to get over getting screwed over by a friend, but I couldn't find anything handy. Automation and agile and creativity. I couldn't find anything. So don't hate
the player, hate the game. Speaking of the player, we've got Data and Mozart with what do Allan, Iverson, and Direct Lake have in common? Josh, I need to know this because what do they have in common?
So this is a great article, and for me, I know people hate some of these clickbait, type of titles. Me, as far as tech, like when you talk about other news articles, shouldn't be clickbait. Tech articles, I love to see how people wordsmith and pull these things together. Then you bring in Allen Iverson, which I couldn't afford Jordans when I was a kid. So my first pair of basketball player shoes were a nice pair of Iverson low cuts. So you had me at hello there. Let's just say that. And Iverson's nickname was the answer. And so Nicola does a great job here of going down through the article and really laying out how Direct Lake is the answer. Love the association there. Brought it all together. Does a great job about talking about how it's the answer, its differences, from import mode for folks who are, understand Power BI and kind of direct query and import mode. How does it actually work? Gets into that, and talks through even, the updating of the Direct Lake connection and stuff like that, and how it's better than import in those ways. But also, again, I've always been the person who gets caught by the gotchas. One of the last things right before the conclusion, limits and considerations, right? So he also lays out, yes, this is the answer, but here's the fine print. Here's the little, the things you need to be careful of, the limitations of it, things you need to keep in mind. Just a solid article from stem to stern. Let's throw a boat analogy in there.
I love it. I love it. It's great stuff. And
ahoy, mate.
Allen Iverson was the answer, and so is Direct Query. That was absolutely fabulous. Speaking of absolutely fabulous, you know who I'm talking about next, of course.
Do I have another article?
Mr. Niraj Jafari. Processing
you can
millions
present
of events using Databricks, Delta Live Tables, Azure Event Hubs, and Power BI. Niraj, millions of events. Let's get into it here. What do we got?
So last week, remember we posted Databricks, Delta Lakes, able to do it in one lake. So I was like doing like, what's the next step? And I was like, okay, let's try something else. So this is a good article that I came across from the Databricks PG in Azure. And she gives us a way how to streamline the event hubs into a Databricks live table, which is Delta Lake. She explains you out what Delta Lake tables are, and then she shows you how to go step by step, creating the whole environment. She even goes saying creating the infrastructure first, create the Databricks environment, and then goes up there, and then she puts up the whole environment in there. Something that definitely, Brad, I would work out and create a video of this, but something really interesting came up. I did a little bit of it, and it does get almost 1 million record in live streaming. So that would be a cool example to have all three integrated to each other.
Well, and I like how she also has in here how you migrate from Kinesis to event hubs.
Yep.
Because I think that's very, very important. When people look at how we transaction process things in an incredibly fast and near real-time way, we're typically talking about an infrastructure or an architecture that we would call a queue-based messaging infrastructure, where we are sending out tons and tons and tons of small messages and then applying those very, very quickly. I agree. I think the next time that we do one of those videos, if you've got this as a demo, that's just going to knock my socks off. I'm down for that. Yep. Speaking of, I wanted to make sure and share this because, of course, we have some good friends, a world-renowned Guy in a Cube, Where to Find Adam and Patrick. They've got a whole bunch of events coming up where you're going to be able to see them live. They're starting out in Fabric February in Oslo, Norway, but they're going to be over in Europe for a little while. And one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm going to get to interact with them at SQLBits, which I'm really looking forward to. Mark Pryce-Maher and I are going to be delivering the pre-con over there for how to get certified, or going from, zero to hero, essentially, with your certification. Also, you're going to get 50% off the discount of our SQLBits pre-con. And then Patrick and Adam will end up at the end of March at, of course, the Vegas Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. That's going to be a really big deal. I'm going to be over there with Mark Pryce-Maher and Shaban Watson, delivering that same pre-con that we're doing at SQLBits. And you can see he's tracking where they're going and the different places they are. I thought this would be really cool because there's going to be a lot of wonderful Microsoft folks there. But if you are very interested in interacting, of course, with our good friends over at Guy in the Cube, you need to understand where they're going to be and what's going on. This is a very busy time that we get in the community. I feel like spring is very busy. And then we get into the fall, and that's always very busy as well. So it's one of those things where I love that they put this video out there. I thought that was great. Yeah, Niraj, go ahead, buddy. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh my God, Josh. Maybe maybe the next Wednesday's video, Brad, you should do where Brad is, because you're also going to be a lot of places, right? SQLBits, Vegas, Atlanta.
I got an idea for next Wednesday's video, and I've got an idea for this one. As a matter of fact, if we get everything scheduled right, Andreas and I have something fun we might do next Wednesday. So, but you're right. We should definitely do a Where in the World is Brad, because we've got some stuff coming up. We've got some SQL Saturdays we're going to be at, and we've got different conferences. As a matter of fact, this weekend on February the 3rd, I'm going to be presenting how to harness the power of notebooks in Microsoft Fabric for Data Toboggan, which is an online free event. Data Toboggan, free to register. You've got a whole bunch of Microsoft folks who are going to be presenting there. Again, wonderful MVPs that are also participating. We've had Mr. Andy Cutler on his content on the show before, and he is one of the organizers for this. I was going to say there's so many great community organizers. Data Toboggan is a really, really cool thing. Speaking of a really cool thing, I saw this and found, and this was absolutely just enthralling. And of course, you know, I'm talking about the mountain man, Mr. Dan Taylor, with Use Fabric notebooks, code-based orchestration tools to avoid concurrent write conflicts. And I have no idea what's going on with my cookies. While I do have tinnitus, I've never Googled it. So I don't know why it's got that picture in there. I just got to scroll away from that. That's disturbing. I don't know what they were doing to that error, but Dan, tell me about this blog. Break it down for me.
That's lies. Brad has tinnitus.
Before we get into the blog, are there still discount codes for SQLBits, or has that passed for your session?
I believe the time has passed for the discount codes. But I do know that for the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference, the Azure Data Community Code is good for $100 off. Rie shared that with us earlier today. And so if you sign up for the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference, you use Azure Data Community, you get $100 off.
Excellent. Yeah, because I put there, if you're going to be at SQLBits, make sure you register for Mark's and Brad's session. It's going to be a good one. All right, but back to where we were, ADD. All right, so use Fabric code-based orchestration tool to avoid concurrent write conflicts by MIM, right? So this was kind of outside my wheelhouse and way above my head, but I found this really interesting because I'm starting to get into notebooks. I'm starting to get, you've inspired me, Brad. You do it all the time for the videos. I'm like, I need to take over that seat. But anyhow, Mim goes in here and he has a problem. He has a notebook that inserts data, and then he has a notebook that backfills data. He provides a couple workarounds in there. I definitely recommend that you read the workarounds and why we can't use them. But then Mim points out that we have MS Spark utilities. Gives a huge shout out to our friend Sandeep Pawar with the coolest Twitter name out there, right? Power BI, I mean, one of the best one. Goes through the first case scenario of if a new file drops in there, how we can pick that up and make sure we can orchestrate that in parallel there. And then there's another way where we can use notebooks using DAG with Python code, and he shows how we can orchestrate their multiple notebooks within Python code using DAG, which I had to look up because I had no clue what DAG was, and that is
data acrylic graph.
I didn't know. Directed acrylic graph. Bravo, bravo. And I definitely recommend, I may have a blog that I want to share next week on that because I had to do some reading on that. So great inspiring article by Mim here, how to orchestrate things, and a great learning opportunity for us all.
Excellent, excellent stuff.
You need to take care of that.
Yeah, Mim is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, well, it just happens, right? Too many years of DJing at parties when I was in college. The ears just ring. That's I was going to say that's what it gets back to. No, I didn't have two turntables and a microphone, but I did have a fade.
I have something very awesome. And by the way, it did not, for whatever reason, get posted in the YouTube chat when I tried, or at least it's not showing up here in our broadcast center. But 4 hours ago, SQLBits did announce that early bird prices are extended for 2 more days.
Ooh.
So if you do want to go to SQLBits, early bird prices are still in effect for 2 more days. They didn't. They didn't end it yesterday like they should. So it will end on January 31st.
There you go. End of the month. You got 2 more days to be able to get your early bird pricing in for SQLBits. I can't think of anything more fantastic than that. But maybe the next article and the next presenter I have, who is, of course, Mr. Andreas Brazilia, with how to set up an NL2 SQL system with Azure OpenAI Studio.
Oh, I love this article. I don't know if you did I mention this last week, but Niraj and I and our great friend Sabyasachi over in India, we added a nice little accelerator to AI in the box for natural language processing to SQL. So, but our good friend Sabyasachi and us took a code first approach. What I like about this article is that they're taking the Azure OpenAI Studio approach of how to create a natural language processing. You know, hey, how many sales happened in this last month? How many products do I have? Converting that into SQL. Sorry,
there we go. There we go.
SQL statements, and then sending that out in unison, sending that natural language to OpenAI, converting that into a nice query, and then sending that back out to your SQL database. But they do it here, not a code first approach. They do it through the Azure OpenAI Studio. So both are great. What I like about this is for Azure OpenAI Studio, if you were to say, hey, I want to have that scenario, build that scenario for my business, my internal processes, start here, start in Azure OpenAI Studio, work it out, get that going, and then you'll more than likely incorporate that flow through code into an application.
Wonderful stuff. Wonderful. Absolutely love it. Speaking of the love, I got to give some love to this next one. I always love a good advanced monitoring thing. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Josh Luedeman with advanced monitoring for PostgreSQL using log analytics. Josh, what do we got here?
So this was actually a great article that someone actually sent to us during last week's show. So we wanted to get this queued up. But what it is it's an article really about diving into how to do monitoring and with Azure Monitor and log analytics, and then actually taking that, bringing those different pieces together, combining the metrics with log analytics, and then figuring out how to query. So it gets a little bit into the KQL around creating log query alerts. An example scenario, pretty standard with really any relational database platform, monitoring CPU and things like that. And then, using that example goes through some of the things to consider with it, the delays and stuff like that, which is important to know with any monitoring solution you're putting in, making sure how behind how far behind the 8 ball you are, we could say. So really good one, talks about the different ingestion strategies, things like that. But it's a great article bringing together the features, again, of monitoring with log analytics and using that with Postgres. So just a great article from the Postgres team. Wanted to bring that up because I think we're doing a lot, with Postgres, and definitely, there's more customers using it, frankly.
Yeah, we're seeing the adoption grow and grow, and there's so many wonderful relational platforms out there. Of course, my heart will always belong to SQL, but when it comes Absolutely. To AI, my heart will belong to OpenAI. And I saw this, and I was just fascinated. And of course, I was fascinated by Niraj Jafari, security best practices for Gen AI applications, OpenAI in Azure. Niraj, tell me about some of these great security best practices.
Yep. So one of my customers did ask me this week, okay, what are the best practices? And I found this article, nicely written down by Freddie. He goes on how the data is processed. So for people to understand how the data processes in OpenAI, he walks you through how the things are working on it, so people can understand how the data get processed on it. After that, he goes over privacy and security module of it, where he says how the privacy of the data is or the security of the data is secure, and what people should not be worried about and what people should be worried about. And then he goes on the whole thing saying best practices while you are being open or a Gen AI applications in Azure. What are the best practices that you should follow? Data security is one of them. Data classification, sensitivity, encryption in REST and in transit. And then it goes over every single steps of it. I mean, data masking, data compliances, data segregation. All of them are mentioned in a very nicely way in this article. Something that anybody, I mean, I know there is a lot of excitement out there, people building OpenAI applications, but security definitely is something that you should be considering out, and following the best practices is given up here that can help you out build your OpenAI applications.
Absolutely. There's a lot of times that we're building the plane as we're flying it. And this technology is definitely one of those things. And naturally, there's an initial assignment, there's an initial, how do we begin building? And then there's a natural follow up of how do we do this in a secure fashion? And the thing is, while it's still very new, we need to let people know what those secure fashions are for them to be able to build this in a way that they can make sure that they've got some best practices in place. Because naturally, that's something we're thinking of. As long as we've been building with it, we're probably the tip of the spear when it comes to people who have had the longest amount of time to be able to work with these different processes. And naturally, Microsoft has been an AI leader for many, many years. And our partnership with OpenAI has just continued to grow. Speaking of partnerships, one of the things I love is I love the work that Matthew Roche is doing over on the BI Polar website that he's got, his personal blog. He's got a whole series that he's doing throughout this entire year, being a PM at Microsoft. And he's got a whole bunch of, he does a YouTube video for each of these different posts that he has. But I know myself, one of the things I've looked at over the years is I would love to be a PM eventually on a product group. And so for me, it's very helpful to go, how do I take somebody who's got 15 years of experience in this job and look at what they're doing and try and learn from them? And I also think it's very helpful from a customer point of view. There may be an assumption of what people do as a PM for Microsoft, but you might not fully understand what that job is and how it aligns. So I love it that he's going through all of these things. This is a level appropriate work. And in this latest episode, what he covers is making sure that you understand your roles, you look at your resource library, you identify opportunities, but also very importantly, gaps, so that you can fill those and you can grow. Now, to be able to work with your manager to map the role library to your specific team and to job. I really love how he goes through all these different things. And this is a lot of great stuff. Again, if you prefer to listen and not read, which is just fine. Look, as someone who is dyslexic, I really like books on tape, and I really like audio books because it keeps me from cross-pronouncing things, as you hear me do every so often on the broadcast. So it's a wonderful opportunity to get really in-depth information from somebody who's been doing the job for 15 years. Don't want to miss this opportunity. Make sure and go and head over to Matthew's blog, go to his YouTube channel and consume this material so you can get a better idea of what it looks like to work at Microsoft. Next fascinating thing. Well, of course, you know who I'm talking about. I'm back to Postgres, which means I'm talking about Mr. Daniel Taylor, Postgres Introduction, History, Features, and SQL Server Comparison. Dan, what do we got here?
So Andre Nemi here. Thank you, by the way, for syncing up with me on LinkedIn. Andre puts together a very detailed article as to a Postgres SQL introduction, history, and so on and so forth here. Goes through the problem, goes through the solution, and I'm not going to go through all this. Definitely a good read. It's a long read, folks. I'm not going to lie about that. Give yourself time to go through this, but goes through the history, the limits, the OS supported and terminology, right, of some of the Postgres features versus SQL, because we have to have those conversations. Postgres is a mature database, y'all. As much as those of us on the SQL side want to say don't use Postgres, Postgres is on version 16, so it's a very mature database, and there's a lot of folks that love using it. So we got to be able to have those conversations. Andrea here provides the details not only for us to be able to do that, but to dig in deeper and do some demos through links inside this article. Some of the things I found most interesting in this article for me was the conversation around concurrency, partitioning, and the indexing types, because those are the things we most commonly look to SQL Server for performance. And Andrea goes through that here inside this article. So definitely worth the read. And also the links inside this article, it's going to take you a couple days to go through this information, folks. Take the time. It's well worth it. Great article.
Wonderful. I love it when we get something that really helps expand my knowledge in a new area. This is going to do that. I've worked with Postgres in the past. I've worked with it currently, but at the same time, to have a level of knowledge that somebody has to be able to apply this and understand that history, it's always good to have that backup information. Wonderful stuff. Speaking of course.
Sorry, it reminds me of you, Brad, when we presented that together. You have such a deep knowledge of SQL Server. Sometimes it's like we'll be talking in a room, either do a pre-conjure session. In the corner, I'll hear Brad go, ooh, 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 and then he'll get this great in-depth information. And you have some of those videos here on the logs and stuff like that within going back to basics. So, folks, check some of that stuff out by Brad here on our channel.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Every now and then I feel like Grandpa Simpson, where I'm like, back in my day, we didn't have hard drives that were SSD. We had hamsters pushing carrots through a beet field. That's how we got our first row store index.
In my day, we didn't have SSIS packages. We had DTS, and that's when we wrote code because we had to.
Oh, you fancy kids with your DTS. We had floppy disk, and we used to call them Bobby Digodocs. Anyway, now that I've completely derailed us,
that's a good turn.
Let's turn back to something great, which is going to be Andreas Padilla following us up with, I love your themes. We got 3 in a row here. Azure AI Studio, talk to your data, build your LLM applications using Azure AI Search and Prompt Flow. What do we got?
Oh, well, I'm going to, jump into my time machine and turn on that flex capacitor while you guys stay in the past with this great article here. Now, this, Bala, what he shows us is how to, within Azure AI Studio, set up our environment, set up our Azure AI Search instance, import, vectorize the data, and then the magic happens, which is how to nicely start working with prompt flow and a little bit of code so you can add in Python scripts to your prompt flow. What I love about this is that it's a zero to hero article that gets you what's happening within prompt flow. What are the advantages of it? Now, remember, you can go through Azure AI Studio and use prompt flow. You could do prompt flow and pure code. But before you get to the code, step into this nice little, daddy of an article. Get that under your system, in your system, learn a little bit of prompt flow, then go over to some code.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. I always love it. Wonderful job stepping through this detailed items. And for some reason, I think I am missing the last article because I know I had to open this up once before. So hold on. Let me get this again. Somehow I must have closed the wrong one.
Really? I'm starting to feel like this is personal.
This is personal. Yeah, I would say that.
No. So literally, I know what you're looking for, and I think somehow the link on the page is pointing somewhere else. Yeah, the actual link that got copied over is different than the display text. So I'm fixing this as we go. For some reason, it kept wanting to come up with that one an article that we. Oh, look at this! We've got a guest. Hello.
Hello.
It's great to see you.
Say hi say hi, community.
No, Dad, I'm too shy. I'm just going to sit there and lie.
Really nervous. Say hello to the world. No.
Yeah. Well, so let's go ahead and let's
for this time, Josh. Next time you will have all the 12 links by yourself. Nothing will say.
I don't know what's happening, but this keeps redirecting to the scale Postgres one. Hold on. I'm going to search for this and I'm going to find it myself. See if I can get Gene's blog, because that's what we're going for. There we go. Okay, finally. Sorry, this was a complete fail on my part. Analyze videos with Azure OpenAI GPT-4 Turbo with Vision and Azure Data Factory by our colleague over on Fast Track, Gene Hayes. Josh, this is an absolutely amazing article. I'm sorry I had so much issues pulling it up, but let's talk about what Gene has done here, because this was really cool.
Well, I was going to say, this is another rockstar article for Gene, so I completely agree. The fact that the link wasn't working is completely on you, because, of course, Gene comes back with this great article and actually bringing together a couple different pieces of architecture within Azure. So it's not just using OpenAI GPT-4 to analyze videos, but it's actually then bringing it together with Data Factory to actually make it a usable solution past one thing. And I can think of, even for me, when I was reading this article, I was looking at this going, wow, the stuff that we could do now, even before I joined Fast Track. I remember being at a customer that, and up in the frozen tundra that is Montreal, Quebec, and working with them. And one of the things they brought up is, wow, we'd love to do this. We receive videos from the public, and we'd like to be able to look at that with an AI model, understand what's going on in it, maybe even get to the point of looking and using that AI model to help understand what's going on in the video, do some video classification. What this article goes through here is actually setting up an orchestration pipeline using OpenAI to, again, recognize the videos and things like that. It's a great article full of screenshots, lots of steps, all the how-tos. Gene does a great job here. Definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. Please do. And I have just double checked that the link is in the description properly for her. It is in the description of the video for every video that we just covered. So if you're looking for this,
I posted it out in the chat too, just in case. So it's good.
Excellent. I was going to say, so please make sure and go and check this out. We're over to the wrap up. So there's a couple things that we want to remind you of. First off, coming up on this weekend on February the 3rd, I've got a presentation at Data Toboggan where I'm going to be covering how to harness the power of notebooks and Microsoft Fabric. This is at 3 p.m. to 3:45 p.m. in GMT time. However, it is going to be 10 a.m. to 10:45 a.m. East Coast time. So this will be recorded. It's going to be up on the Data Toboggan website. So if you get a chance, remember, it is a free conference. There's a lot of amazing content. Go and sign up for Data Toboggan. Next up, what I want you to do is I want you to head over to SQLBits. Remember, SQLBits is not just an in-person conference. It can also be a virtual conference. So if you can't make it over to England and you would love to see some of the amazing content, the agenda is posted. The pre-cons are there. I'm sorry, the training days are there. And you can sign up for any one of those and be a remote attendee. So remember to get that in now. And of course, the week after that, if you want to come out to Las Vegas, we would love to see you at the Microsoft Fabric Community Conference. It is literally a who's going to be there. It is an amazing conference. Guy in a cube, Patrick Block, Adam Saxton, Bob Ward, our good friend Buck Woody. So many MVPs, so many wonderful people from the Microsoft Fabric product group. Our good friend Bradley Schacht will be there. I was going to say, you don't want to miss this event. It is going to be just amazing. There is no virtual attendance for it, though. You must be live and in person in Las Vegas, Nevada to be able to attend. After that, make sure you sign up for those SQL Saturdays, because Dan and I are hoping to see you in Atlanta, and the rest of us are hoping that we will see you up in Jacksonville. All right. Guys, is there anything else you wanted to cover?
I can't think of anything, man. Not me, anyways.
All right. Well, for Andreas Padilla, Mr. Josh Luedeman, Daniel Taylor, and Niraj Jafari, I'm Bradley Ball, and I want to thank you so much for joining us on Tales from the Field. Be good to one another out there, and take care, everybody. See you next time.
I know that I like to do it cause it's sensation. I live my life in my head like a narration. Don't expect greatness, do my best, man, I'll take it. Wake up.